Hi, I'm Brittany, a neurodivergent mum and speech pathologist. This is Not Just Theories, where I share what actually works in my real, messy life. Because life doesn't follow a theory. Here's what I actually do. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Not Just Theories. Today is the second episode of our little 4-part series on play, and it is all about open-ended play. So I'll be talking a little bit about what open-ended play actually is, why it matters so much for our children's development, and how we as parents can support it without overcomplicating things or spending a fortune on toys. This episode follows really quite naturally from last week's one on toy rotation, because once you've simplified the toys and created that calmer environment, you start to notice something beautiful, which is that your child begins to play deeper. They start to use things in new ways. They build, imagine, combine, they lead. And that is open-ended play in action. So let's start with a simple definition. Open-ended play is play that doesn't have one right answer, one correct use, or one set outcome. It's play that is led by your child's curiosity, not by the toy's instructions. So, for example, a puzzle is closed-ended. It is done when the pieces are in place. This is not to say that children can't use puzzles open-endedly, because children can turn anything into open-ended play. But at its heart, what a puzzle does is be put together and be completed when it's all put together. Whereas something like a set of wooden blocks is by its very nature open-ended. It can be used to stack, to sort, to pretend, to build, knock down, start again. They can be, it could be Elsa's castle one day, the next it could be a pretend phone, and the next day those same blocks could be used to be pieces in a shop, and that block could be a piece of lettuce, and that block could then the next day be an apple. Or so they're like, by its nature, blocks can be anything that your child imagines it to be. So while you can use puzzle pieces the same way, it often takes a lot more of a leap of imagination to use something like a puzzle as an open-ended toy, because when you see a puzzle, you're like, I'm going to use that as a puzzle. I'm going to do the puzzle, and now the puzzle is done. It's not sort of instinctive to look at a puzzle and go, I'm going to use this puzzle piece as a coin to pay for my shopping. I'm going to use this puzzle piece as a phone. Anything can be open-ended, but there are a set of toys that you have to work much harder to imagine them being anything than other toys. So open-ended play is when you're not using the toy to tell you what to do. The child is telling the toy what it wants, what it's going to be that day. And that is really powerful, because every time your child does that, they're practicing creativity. They're practicing problem solving. They're using flexible thinking. These skills don't come from being told what to do, but from exploring what could be. So from a developmental perspective, open-ended play builds what are called executive functioning skills. So these are things like planning, focus, working memory, impulse control. And open-ended play really, really supports language development, because the richer and the more imaginative the play, the more opportunities there are for children to use language in flexible and creative ways. There's also a lot of research out there that the different steps of play predate the language skills. So children will engage in single-step pretend play, and then after that, that's when they start using single words. Children will engage in multi-step pretend play a little bit before they start combining multiple words together. So we sort of see play as being foundational to language, and open-ended play and the creativity and the multiple steps that can come in that are just building these amazing foundational cognitive skills that language builds on. And perhaps most importantly, open-ended play helps children learn to regulate themselves, because when they're absorbed in that self-directed play, they are practicing patience, they're practicing persistence, coping with frustration when things don't work out the way they want it to, without us having to teach it explicitly. You might have heard this beautiful phrase, I love it, and it's that play is the work of childhood, which really just means that play is what children are meant to be doing with their days to understand their world. It's how they test ideas, it's how they develop emotionally, and it's through doing rather than being told. And I think the more focus you put on explicitly entertaining your child with anything that's not play, you're taking away from that way in which they learn. So, what does open-ended play look like in our home? I want to share what this looks like because I think sometimes open-ended play gets overcomplicated. There are some absolutely gorgeous toys online. If you look up open-ended toys, you'll see brands like Grimm's and Grappat, and they have these amazing wooden, handmade, hand-dyed, sculpted toys that are really expensive. They're beautiful, don't get me wrong, they are absolutely beautiful, and if we had endless money, I would probably have quite a lot of these toys. But children don't need $250 block sets to do open-ended play. They can do open-ended play with a $250 block set, but they can also do open-ended play with a whole bunch of bark chips for free at the park. So the actual toy, what open-ended play looks like, is all about the imagination part of the game. It's not about the toy, it's about what they imagine it to be. So yes, you can do open-ended play with these amazing, gorgeous toys that are handmade in, I don't know, Germany or something, but you can also do open-ended play with your wooden Kmart blocks. You can do open-ended play with free bark chips from the park. You can really use anything, limited only by the power of your child's imagination. And the idea of open-ended play is to develop that imagination. So giving them access to toys that don't tell them what they have to use them for, so they can practice doing this open-ended play, building that muscle, means that when they are presented with toys that tell them what they are meant to be used for, your kid doesn't have to follow that instruction from the toy. So when you've only got a limited space, like we do, open-ended play is perfect because it means we don't need to have a million toys out all the time for my child to play, or my children to play what they want to play. When you've only got 6 toys in your 6-toy shelf, everything that's out has to earn its place. You know, if you put something out that can only really be used one way, that's a lot of missed opportunity, unless your child is got an amazing imagination and can turn it into anything. So some of the things that we often have out in our rotation are blocks, fabric squares, fabric scarves, magnet tiles, a couple of animal or people figures, which might be range from quite realistic. So we have some plastic animals that look really realistic. We also have some wooden toys that are a bit more vaguely shaped like those animals. And we have people figures that have heaps of emotional faces on them. Like we have little Elsa dolls and Bluey dolls, but we also just have these peg people that have eyes and nothing else. So a couple of those. And then we also have the toy kitchen with some really basic accessories. And that is it. And what's amazing is just how many worlds can come out of just a couple of those things. So things like the play scarves, they can be fire, they can be water, they can be waved around in the air, they can be tied on as capes, they can be, used for playing peekaboo. They can be used as a baby blanket. Sometimes they're put in a shoebox, and that's the bath for the babies. So the one thing, the scarves are just 100 different things depending on what your child wants to use them for. The blocks, sometimes you use them to build a zoo. Sometimes you build them to build a house or a car park. The blocks might be used to build a tower up really tall that's then knocked down. You might use a single block as a phone. You might pretend a block's a car. Like you can sort of see how endless, the only limit is literally your imagination. So when, as adults, we present these toys, it's really important not to rush to like label it or tell them what to do or correct their ideas, because letting your child play creatively is just one of the most beautiful things that you can give your child. And this for me is one of the hardest things, is not jumping in too soon, because when my kids get a toy out, I have to consciously remind myself it's their play, not mine. And I really struggle not to fall into the habit of giving them suggestions or turning it into like teaching moments. So telling them, oh, that's not where the fire truck goes. I mean, does it really matter where the fire truck goes? Or if I tell them, hey, here's a better way to build it taller, then I'm not necessarily paying attention to what they're actually trying to achieve in that moment. So open-ended play thrives when we follow them instead of leading. If they were to get out the blocks and start building, and I label it and I say, wow, you're building a tower, but actually in their head, they weren't building a tower. They were building, a pizza, and they were putting blocks on top of it to be the decorations for their pizza, as an idea. I can actually make them feel like their play is not valid, or make them feel like that's what they should be doing with the blocks. So there is no wrong idea. The idea of open-ended play is there is no wrong play. What your child wants to explore with those toys is what they should be exploring. As long as they're not doing something dangerous, let them to it. If they want to put the baby in a Tupperware tub and pretend it's a spaceship, that's creativity. That's not like, oh, no, the baby doll goes over here in the bath and we wash the baby. Baby dolls can't go to space. You're limiting your child if you're telling them what a toy is used for. If they pick up a toy and maybe it is more of a closed-ended toy, like it's a toy that looks like a choc chip cookie, and as an adult we look at it and we go, that's a choc chip cookie. I'm going to use it for playing cafes. But actually your child might pick it up and just go, this is sort of a round disky thing. I could use it as a choc chip cookie, but actually today I want to go shopping, and it's not that I'm buying a choc chip cookie, it's that this is my coin. I'm going to use this to buy something. Or, oh, actually it looks like a choc chip cookie, but I'm just going to pretend it's not. And actually I'm going to put it over here and it can be the bed for this cow. And like, it's amazing what kids can look past what something looks like and use it the way they want to use it. And this is why kids don't need as many toys as they have. I mean, I have a bajillion toys in my home. I love buying toys for my kids. But actually, they really only need some objects of various shapes that they can then pretend are anything. Like we have all these amazing toys that are like, here's the doctor's kit. And that's really fun, especially with younger kids who maybe don't quite have the imagination to pick something up and imagine what it could be. But I've played doctors with my kid with just sticks and rocks. And this is really that heart of what play used to be before, modern commercial capitalism, where your kid needs a specific toy to develop that specific skill, and if they don't have that role play set, how could they possibly pretend to be a doctor? But actually, open-ended play doesn't depend on special toys. Simple materials spark their imagination, and they can be anything. So just go simple. Cardboard boxes, scarves, wooden spoons, cups, blankets, pillows, rocks, sticks. They're basically invitations for creativity. And you might have heard this concept called loose parts play in early childhood education. And this is the idea that children learn best when they can manipulate and combine materials in their own way. Loose parts, by definition, don't have a fixed purpose. A cardboard box could be a house, it could be a boat, it could be a bath, it could be a basket, it could be a car. A stick can be a wand, it can be a horse, it can be a fishing rod, it can be a sword. And the freedom that fuels their imagination is amazing to watch. It's just beautiful. And yes, you can go and you can spend hundreds of dollars on loose parts that are aesthetically pleasing, but you can also just go and grab a bunch of random items out of your recycling bin and out of the park and the garden, and your child can do anything with it. They don't need as many toys as they have, almost by definition. So we're going camping soon, and I was thinking about what toys we were going to pack. And to be honest, we're packing some toys for the car trip, because I think in the car, when they don't have freedom to sort of physically explore around and combine different things, I think having some really structured closed-ended toys in that situation is really helpful. But actually, for while we're away camping, we're not going to have any toys. The idea is that they're just going to play outside with whatever they can find. So rocks, sticks, mud, potions, like you can do anything. We've got some plastic bowls and the spoons and stuff that we're going to be using for our picnics, and between picnics they're going to be able to play with them however they want. They might choose to make potions, they might choose to build a yesterday my daughter actually was playing with the plastic bowls and plates from our cupboard, and she turned them into a birthday cake. So she wasn't pretending they had cake on them. She wasn't using them as a bowl with cake in it. She was stacking the plates and bowls to create like a tiered birthday cake and singing happy birthday. It was really, really cute. And it's just that idea of like when you don't have limits on what an object is, it can be anything. And then your child's play can just stretch further. They can do these different play scenarios, and all we have to do is let them. That's our job. Basically, we're the stage manager. We're not the star of the show. We're not the main actor. Our job is to set up the environment, offer the props, and then step back and keep track of them and make sure that the props aren't being used to injure each other. Very important stage manager job. So some simple things that might help your child engage in open-ended play. So the first step is to create space for play. So this is not about setting up a whole playroom, even just like a little corner or a mat or a bench works. So the idea is that it's somewhere they can leave things out and come back to them. When you offer toys, offer materials rather than instructions. So don't present the scarf and then tell them what it is. Just leave a basket of scarves or fabric scraps. Leave out the Play-Doh, leave out the blocks, leave out some random things from your Tupperware cupboard, and let your child decide what to do. If your child is struggling to play with the open-ended toys, they don't really know what to do, and this is the first time they've done that, I think sometimes kids struggle with that freedom and lack of imagination because they haven't developed that muscle slowly over time. So if this isn't something you've done with your children since they were born, that's fine. It doesn't mean you can't start. It just might mean they need a bit of extra scaffolding or help to start seeing the possibilities. And ways to do that, again, it's not telling them what to do, but model curiosity. So join in and sort of say, oh, I wonder what would happen if, or I see you're putting that block on top. Tell me about it. So again, you're not labeling what they're doing, but you're encouraging them to explore, and you're using that sort of cognitive language, like, I wonder what would happen if I wonder what that is. Oh, I love pretending. What are you pretending right now? Rather than telling them what you think they're doing. And again, protect that playtime. So try not to interrupt too often, even with well-meaning praise. So like if you come along and you say, wow, that's a great tower, and your child was imagining this building that they were doing, and you've just broken them out of that. So, I mean, again, that's very different to when you've been invited into the play by your child. But even then, try and be a follower rather than a leader. Let you step back rather than forcing yourself into that leadership position. And this is something that's hard for me. So when I am tired or overstimulated and I see my kid find, a basket of loose parts and they just tip it out and it looks like it's spread all over the floor, creating a mess, it's really hard for me not to come along and just start tidying it up or shucking it back into the tub. But actually, sometimes I've done that, and then my daughter's been like, no, that was, Elsa's castle, and she was over in the other corner. I thought she wasn't playing with those blocks anymore, but actually she was over in the corner with Elsa, like chasing, this is all Frozen script play, Elsa and Marshmallow were chasing Anna away, and she was going to come back to the castle and pretend to be Elsa. And so I think sometimes, especially as kids get a little bit older, and they move from that sort of really early toddlerhood of just being able to play with one toy at a time, and they start moving between toys in a really fluid way, doing this open-ended imagination. Try not to tidy up the stuff that they're still actually playing with. So give it the time, give it the space, try not to look at it too much. Remind yourself that this is their work. They need to do this. This is how they learn. This is how they practice. They're learning amazing skills from this play. They're learning how to focus and how to create. So take it as a moment to breathe. Open-ended play is a gift to your child. So as we spoke about last week, toy rotation is amazing for simplifying things down, but sometimes parents worry that their kid's going to get bored and not know what to do. And that's true, especially if your child hasn't had this space and such few toys available to them. But if you make sure that those toys are open-ended, your child can combine them in new ways, and they actually have space to think and experiment. You might even see this if you're at home and you're like, oh gosh, my kid's so bored, I've got to get out and go somewhere else. And you might go somewhere with fewer toys, but they play for longer with them. And sure, there's an element of a novelty factor, which we talked about with the toy rotation last week. But sometimes my kids go to like a friend's house and they're playing in the backyard, and there are literally like, there's one toy available, and they will play with that one toy for like an hour, but it's not like they're playing it with it over and over again the same way. What they're actually doing is creatively using it, using their imagination to turn it into anything. And that same, bucket starts off just being used as a bucket, and they carry things around in it, and then maybe they pretend to build a sandcastle, and then maybe they get a ball and they start throwing it into the bucket and using it as a place to catch, and then that bucket gets put into the corner, and it's actually the fairy queen's castle. And it's amazing what kids can do with 2 sticks and a rock. Could be anything. So when you're doing that toy rotation, think about how you're creating a space for your child to combine toys creatively rather than just bouncing between them. That rotation really makes open-ended play much more possible and helps you see which toys really earn their keep. So, when you're thinking about if your house is full and you need to declutter, which toys do you get rid of? Well, get rid of ones that only serve one purpose. Do you have a toy which has a screwdriver and 3 screws, and they can use it to screw and then unscrew and then that's it? And then maybe is that toy keeping, worth keeping when you can practice that same motion just with some Tupperware containers under your cupboard, and they can practice that hand movement. Do you really need to keep the toy? So looking at, is it closed-ended or is it open-ended? Not to say that there's closed-ended toys that aren't worth having. Like we've got a toy that's it's a toy cash register. That's what it is. It's really hard to imagine it being anything else, but because a toy cash register as a closed-ended toy can be used in so many different pretend play setups, it still can be used in open-ended play. Like that toy register can be at a grocery store, it can be at a cafe, it can be at a hardware store, literally anywhere that sells things can have a cash register. So although it's a closed-ended toy, it can be used in open-ended situations. And there's nothing wrong with having pretend chocolate chip cookies, because your child can pretend to do other things with them. But if you've got a space issue, then maybe just having a bunch of loose parts in your toy kitchen is better than having specific toy kitchen food for your child. So I guess thinking about takeaways, sorry, I've been talking for a long time. Open-ended play does not require fancy toys. It does not require elaborate setups. All it really needs is time and space and trust. You need to trust that your child will know how to play when they're given the opportunity. You need to step back to make room for their ideas to grow, and simplify to make room for their creativity, and watch to get a little glimpse into that incredible world inside your child's mind. Thanks for tuning in to Not Just Theories this week. If today's episode inspired you to create a bit more space for open-ended play at home, I would love to hear about it. Message me on Instagram at Not Just Theories. I would love if you could take a moment to either leave a comment, a rating, or a review of this episode, or just share it with a friend who you think might benefit from learning a little bit about open-ended play. It really helps the podcast reach people who would find it helpful. Next week, I will be continuing our mini-series on play with an episode about how to actually play with your child without taking over. So we'll be talking about following their lead, the different roles parents can play when they're interacting with their child, and how to find a bit of a balance between connection and independence. And that will be leading into my final episode on this little play series, which will be all about independent play and how to encourage independent play in your child. So until next week, let them play. Have a great time. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to Not Just Theories. I really appreciate you being here. If this episode resonated with you, the best way to support the show is to follow, leave us a rating or review, or just share this episode with someone else who you think might find it comforting or useful. I hope to see you back here soon.